Assalamu alaikum, iLEAD conference. This is Yasmin Mogahed. It's with a heavy heart that I share with you that unfortunately I could not make it to the conference in person due to unforeseen sudden circumstances. But I am grateful that I'm able to come to you and share this message with you, inshaAllah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So there's a very, very important topic in which the Prophet ﷺ actually gives us a criteria for character. And in this hadith he says, خيركم خيركم لأهله. And the meaning of this hadith is that the best of you are the best to their family, and some translate this as spouse or wives. Now, I just want to take a moment and just reflect on this hadith. Why is it that the Prophet ﷺ is using this criteria? The Prophet ﷺ could be using any other criteria, but why is it that he's using the criteria of family or specifically wife or spouse in talking about who is the best? And it's if you sit and you reflect about what it is about family, that would make it such a high reward to be such an indication of character that one would be good to their family. Why would that be the case? Well, for one, human beings, it's easy to be on our best behavior when we're in public, right? It's easy to be on our best behavior when we feel that we're being watched by the public. But it's harder, and it takes more character to be your best when no one is watching, right? When you're inside of your home, no one from the masjid sees you. No one from your job sees you. No one from your friends, your social circle see you. Your boss can't see you. You know, the imam at the masjid can't see you. People can't see you on social media. And so it's a very hidden sort of space. And so to be your best when no one sees except for your family, of course, that takes greater character because you're not showing off. You're not on display, but you're in the privacy of your own home. The other thing is that oftentimes with our family, unfortunately, we sometimes take our family for granted. And part of the reason why that happens is that a lot of people, they sort of think of their family as, that no matter what happens and no matter how they treat them, they can kind of do whatever, and the family will always just take it and will never, will never leave. And so unfortunately, there's this, sometimes there's a sense of taking people for granted who are in your family, because the idea is, well, I can do whatever I want. Unfortunately, some people even consider their family various kinds of punching bags, even if it's not physical, but emotional punching bags. You know, you've had a bad day, so you take it out on your family. So unfortunately, what happens is because your family is closest to you, and because you believe that they'll always be there no matter what, sometimes we human beings tend to take those people for granted. Take those people who are closest to us because they're there for us and because they don't leave and because they stick around. Unfortunately, sometimes we take them for granted. So for various reasons, the Prophet ﷺ is saying a very, very profound and difficult thing. Is he's saying خيركم خيركم لأهله, the best of you are the best of their families, because it's a gauge of what is your character when no one is watching, and what is your character with those who you believe will never leave, that you can actually treat however you want, and there's no repercussions. Sometimes we think, that there's no nothing to take us, to account of how there's no accountability. Sometimes we think with the way we treat our family. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that those who can be at their best, even when they are not being watched, even when it is private, and with those who we believe that no matter what we do, they won't leave, right? Those who are closest to us. So it's interesting to note that oftentimes we lose track of priorities. So sometimes we focus so much on the leaf and we miss the forest, right? So for example, sometimes we will fight about little matters in fiqh, for example, how you make wudu, or where you hold your hands, or which kind of meat is allowed, which kind of dhabiha meat is allowed, or moon sighting. That we fight about these minor issues and issues where there's legitimate difference of opinion within Islam and within the scholarly opinions. But we fight about these things, and we sometimes miss the bigger picture. So for example, we might focus on the minor issues and then miss something as huge as khayrukum khayrukum li ahli. See, the Prophet ﷺ here, he's not saying that the best of you are the best at following this particular small fiqhi rule, or the best of you are the one who dresses a certain way, or the best of you are, he doesn't even say the best of you are the one who has the longest beard, right, or the shortest pants. Although these are things that, with the intention of following the sunnah, these are rewardable. But this is not what the Prophet ﷺ is focusing on in this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ is focusing on how we treat our families. And the sad irony is that sometimes when people start to, for example, become more religious, more practicing, so often we find that people who start to become more practicing believe that they also should become more harsh. And unfortunately, we sometimes see this trend where as a family member starts to become more religious, they also start to become maybe more harsh with their families, maybe more strict, maybe even more angry. And that's a sign that there's something going wrong, because the Prophet ﷺ has clarified the criteria for our character. He's saying that if you want to test character, if you want a litmus test of who is actually the best in our deen, he's saying look at how a person treats their family. He doesn't say look at how a person dresses. He doesn't say measure the length of a person's beard. He doesn't say, check how short a person's pants are. But he says look at how they treat their family, that those who are the best to their families, those are the best. And then he continues and says, وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ, and I am the best to my family or to my wife. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, and of course we know that the Prophet is the epitome of what we aspire to be as a human being, and he's saying that he is the best to his family or to his wife, and he's our example. He's our ultimate example. So this is important because it's one of those aspects in our deen where I think we miss the point. We miss the bigger picture, that our character, the way we treat others, and namely and most importantly our families, is the most important criteria or litmus test for character. That the best of us are the ones who are going to be best to our families. So as a person starts to become more religious, they should also start to become kinder with their families. They should start to become more patient with their family, more tolerant, more generous. That when the light of Iman, when the deen really fills a person's heart, when the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really fills a person's heart, you will see it reflected in their character, and you will see it reflected in how they treat their families, how they treat others in general, and how they treat their families in specific. And so it's just very, very important that we start also to become introspective, looking at our own behavior, looking at our own treatment with our own families. Are we following the advice of the Prophet ﷺ? And we can gauge ourselves. Where are we at? We're all on a path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we're on that path, we can gauge where we're at. And this is one of the most important ways to gauge that, which is, let me look, okay, I've been on this path and I've been trying to, become a better Muslim. I've been trying to, work on my deen, work on my Islamic character. Let me see where I'm at. Let me check where I'm at. We have to be introspective as we're growing in our deen and in our Islamic personality. And so if we want to be introspective and you want to know where you're at, look at how you are with your family. Are you better now than you were last year? Are you working on being more compassionate, more patient, more kinder, more generous? Or do we find that we're going the other way? Are we really impatient? Are we constantly snapping? Are we becoming more harsh? And unfortunately, that aspect, it has become very common, that people feel that the more religious they become, the more harsh they have to become, the more strict they have to become, and sometimes just the more plain mean. And unfortunately, that's a complete misunderstanding of the deen, because the Prophet ﷺ was the kindest to his family. He was the softest to his family, and he had the softest heart. It's important to understand that when the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enters a heart, that heart should become softer. That heart should not become harder. It should not become more tough. It should become softer. We're told in a hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is gentle and He loves gentleness. We're also told that Allah rewards for gentleness what He does not reward for harshness or any other thing. So we are told that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this quality of being gentle. And so as a person starts to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the heart should become softer, more compassionate, more forgiving, and not the other way around. We shouldn't start to become hard and think that that's the deen, right? The more religious you are, the more strict you must be. The more religious you are, the more harsh you must be. And unfortunately, that harshness tends to begin with how we treat our families. So we have it, unfortunately, upside down in this regard. So it's just a reminder to ourselves that we need to start with the family. When we talk about our character, for example, many of us, we can be polite outside the home, right? You're at the grocery store, you say please and thank you, right? You're with your colleagues, it's all polite. Of course, with your boss, you're polite. But then as soon as we get home, all that politeness, we're just tired, right? It's tired of being polite. So all that politeness isn't saved for the family. It's almost like we've taken the hadith and we've flipped it, right? That we actually give our best outside the home and we save our worst for inside the home. And that's exactly the opposite of the prophetic statement. The prophetic statement is saying that you should be your best inside the home, save the best of you for your family. But unfortunately, many of us do the opposite. We save the best of us for strangers, right? People outside, people we don't even know, at the store or at the cash register, our boss, our colleagues, the people at the masjid. We save our best for them, our best behavior, our most polite, and we come home and it's just like, then it's all that goes away, and unfortunately, just kind of our worst behavior comes out, and that's a problem that we have to backpedal. We have to change that and realize that that's taking the statement of the Prophet ﷺ and putting it lopsided. It's upside down. So remembering the importance of that. One other thing when it comes to the family, I think one of the biggest myths that we've had in terms of our community specifically, one thing that I've seen over the years, and I think it's the reason at a root level why many of our families are falling apart. And it seems like something that you probably won't expect me to say, but I think that this is really the root of many of our problems. And that is that our families don't have the right foundation. The proper foundation of a family is not the children. And that's where I think many of us have gone wrong. Many of our family structures, once two people get married, they have a child, all of a sudden the family structure is centered, or rather the foundation is the child. And then of course more children, it's just the children. And then what happens is, with the children being at the foundation, at the center, it creates an imbalance, because the foundation of a family is actually the marriage, not the children. And when you have a family structure where the marriage is the foundation, that will be a strong family. Because you see, when the marriage is strong, when the husband and wife have a strong relationship, a solid relationship, then and only then can the rest of the family be strong and can be stable and healthy. And the children themselves will be able to be more healthy and stable in every way when the marriage is solid. And so I want to repeat that. The proper foundation of a family is not the children, it's the marriage. Now, why is that so important? Because a lot of us have made the mistake in our communities of making the children the foundation of the family. So what does that look like? It means that once we get married and then we have children, we stop investing in the marriage itself. We stop investing in the relationship with our spouse. And now both spouses invest everything simply into the children. And over time, what ends up happening is that these two people, instead of being husband and wife, they simply become mother and father. They simply become father and mother, rather than husband and wife. And that's a very unstable and dangerous place to be, because there's no longer that foundation of the marriage itself, of the bond between the husband and the wife. When you stop investing in your marriage and your relationship with your spouse, and now everyone's focus is on the children, well, a few problems are going to come out of that. One is that you've lost that stable foundation. The other thing is that you lose the bond between the husband and the wife, and again, you just become a mother and a father living under the same roof, and that's not a healthy relationship, and that's not a solid family structure. And then what happens is, well, the children grow up, right? The children actually quite quickly grow up, and then eventually they, move on, they move out, etc., for college or their job, or they get married. And now what happens to the marriage? Well, if someone hasn't invested in their marriage for 18 years, and then all of a sudden it's just the two of them, then what happens then? There's no relationship left, because for 18 years or for 20 years or for 30 years or for however long, each other were not a priority. Everything was just about the children. And that's also, ironically, it's also unhealthy for the child, because we're raising narcissists. This idea that the world revolves around me, this is a big problem with our current millennial generation, is this idea that everything is kind of about me, and we have a very me obsessed world. I am at the center, right? Me, I. We have social media that does that. We have our parenting that's doing that. And unfortunately, it's actually extremely unhealthy, because it's creating this idea, this illusion really, that the world revolves around me and my needs. And that's also very problematic on many levels, psychologically, emotionally, and most importantly, spiritually. So on every level, it is not healthy to have our lives, our world, revolving around our children, but rather the foundation of our family should be the marriage. A strong family will have a strong marriage at the foundation. And that involves investment. It involves taking time and making your marriage a priority. And that's not selfishness. It's not selfish to take time alone with your spouse. It's not selfish. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. In fact, it means you're a good parent, because you're building a strong foundation for your family and for your children. And the healthiest children are the children who see that their parents' relationship is healthy and that their parents' relationship is solid and stable. And that's when the children will also be solid and stable and healthy. This idea also that our lives revolve around our children with the children at the center is also problematic because, again, it tips the balance. Our foundation should be the marriage in the family structure. But in terms of the center of our lives, it should only be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The center of our lives should never be our children. It should never be our spouse, even. It should never be our jobs. The center is basically what we live for. It's our ultimate focal point in our lives. It should be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then with that, we have our foundation of a strong family, which is the marriage, and then we have our children. And when everything is given its proper place, that is when you have a solid building, right? When everything is in its proper place. So it's very, very important that we realize that the entire universe is built on justice. It's built on everybody getting their rights, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, bimizan, that everything has a measure and things are built with that measure and everything has its place. When things are imbalanced, it creates a lot of problems. One of the types of imbalance that we find in the family structure is, and I've alluded to this, is that when, for example, a mother takes her child and the child becomes the center rather than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the child becomes the foundation of the family rather than the marriage, what happens then is that it creates an imbalance. When you take away the rights, for example, of your spouse, thinking that, but I'm being a good mother, that tips the balance and it creates a lot of problems. So for example, husband and wife should have their time alone. They should have their own private space and their own time. When, for example, mothers instead will sleep by the child and the husband will sleep alone, this is an imbalance, and this is something that goes into the realm of taking away someone's rights, right? And any kind of dhulm at any level, and dhulm is injustice. Any type of dhulm or injustice at any level will always bring about bad consequences down the road, and that's because you're taking away someone's right. The right of the spouse is to have time and intimacy with their spouse. And if you take that away, thinking, but I'm being a really good mom because I'm sleeping by my child until they're whatever age, but yet you're taking away the right of the husband, for example, or of the spouse. So this is an example where there's an imbalance, and that it will never have a good outcome because everything has to be based on balance and justice. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about family and marriage in the Quran. Well, there's three different descriptions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that I'm going to touch upon. The first is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to mawadda and rahma between the spouses. So in Surah Al-Rum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. So Allah is saying that He created from us spouses that we may dwell in tranquility with them. So sukoon is peace and tranquility. It means to be settled, essentially. And so He's explaining this relationship as one of tranquility, that it's something that should be peaceful, something that settles us, rather than unsettling us. And then He says, and I put love and mercy between your hearts, mawadda and rahma. Now, mawadda and rahma, this is the essence of how the relationship should be. It should be one of love and one of mercy. Again, very different than this concept of the harshness that we sometimes see in how people treat their families. The other ayah that I want to touch upon is the ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to spouses as garments for one another, libas. Now, if you think about the purpose of a garment, there's a couple purposes that a garment fulfills. First, a garment protects, right? If it's really, really cold outside, What do? You put on more clothes, and that will protect you from the cold. If there's a lot of sun, you'll put on a hat, and that will protect you from the sun. So one of the jobs of a garment is to protect. Similarly, the spouse is meant to be a protector of the other spouse. So the spouses should be protecting one another. And the other purpose of a garment is to cover. So for example, it covers our awra. This is very important. This is one of the main purposes of a garment, is to cover awra. Similarly, and this is a very important point, similarly, the spouse should be covering the awra of the other spouse. What does that mean? It means not exposing the spouse's flaws, not exposing their mistakes, not exposing their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities to others. Now, of course, and I have to explain this, that in cases where you are seeking help, so for example, if a couple is seeking counseling, or they're seeking mediation, or they're going to someone for help, then in that case it is okay to disclose certain things about your spouse for the sake or for the intention of getting help. But talking generally, we don't expose our spouse. We should be covering the faults of our spouse, just like a garment covers the awra. Okay, and then lastly, one of the purposes of garments is to beautify, right? That's why fashion is such a huge industry, and it has, you know, multi-billion-dollar industry, because it's something that beautifies, right? And people spend so much money on certain designer brands, because we don't just put on clothes, but clothes are also, fashion is also part of beautification. And similarly, the spouse is also meant to beautify the other spouse, to help the other spouse become better, to help you, you know, your spouse can and should bring out the best in you. And that's one of the purposes of a garment. So you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this beautiful analogy that what should the spouses be for one another? You know, they protect, they cover, and they beautify. And then finally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about family in the Quran, in the dua, where He says, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. That we are told to ask, that the believers, Allah, you know, tells us this dua, that the believers are the ones who ask this. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا, oh Allah, give us the gift. Hiba is a gift, and we ask Al-Wahhab for this gift. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. Oh Allah, or our Lord, give us the gift of making our spouses and our children the coolness of our eyes. So qurrata a'yun. This concept of qurrata a'yun is very beautiful. This concept, to sort of explain it, it's a source of peace. You're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make your family a source of peace and tranquility and calm, almost like a shelter in the storm. That we're asking that our families be a place of sanctuary, right? That within the home, within the family, within the marriage, you find a place where you can be at peace, up almost as though there's a storm outside, but there's a sanctuary inside. There's a place to go and find shelter. That is the essence of what the family should be, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here. Now, how can we maintain, this type of, this concept, right? This concept of tranquility and love and mercy and have it be a shelter. What are some things that we can do? First of all, it's really important that we avoid the things which destroy marriages, that destroy families. It's important for us to study. It's good to read and to learn from experts, religious as well as relationship experts, about what are the things that we should avoid in order to preserve our marriages. The other thing that's extremely important in terms of preserving a marriage and any relationship is appreciation. Now, the thing is that human beings, they thrive off of appreciation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this principle in the Quran, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Allah says that if you are grateful, if you are thankful, I will increase you. So this is a divine principle. If we are thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah will increase us. But it's also a principle that works with human beings, that when you are appreciative of others, when you show appreciation, when you show gratitude, you're appreciating what people are doing for you, whether it's your spouse or your any family member. What that brings about is more good stuff. So if someone is doing good towards you and you show appreciation, they will want to do more good towards you, right? وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. This is a principle that when you are grateful, you are increased. And similarly, when you're grateful and show appreciation to people, people also will want to give you more. And so it's very important, as one writer says, replace expectations with appreciation. So if you, instead of expecting, I need this, I must have this, I expect to have this, instead replace that with appreciating when you have those things. Well, I appreciate that you've done this for me, rather than I expect that you're going to do this for me and that for me, and then I don't even feel grateful because I've expected it. But rather show appreciation rather than having those expectations and those demands. And lastly, I just want to point out with regards to gratitude and appreciation is that this doesn't mean that we put up with abuse. This doesn't mean that if someone is mistreating us, well, just suck it up and be grateful. At least it's not worse. We have to be very, very mindful that that as Muslims, we should never accept abuse. We should never turn the other cheek to somebody who is being abused or someone who is mistreating or being unjust. Injustice is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not approve of, does not accept, and neither should we. Whether that injustice is happening against ourselves or against our children or against someone across the world, we should always be a people who fight against injustice, that we take a stand against injustice. The Prophet ﷺ said that if you see something wrong, you should try to change it. Try to change it with your hand. If you cannot, then with your tongue, speaking out against it. And if you could not, then at least hate it in your heart. And this is the weakest of faith. So it's very, very important that we do not think that gratitude means being passive to abuse or allowing someone to be unjust. Okay, so finally, in protecting our relationships and namely our marriages and our families, there's a prescription that I give, and I try to give it every time I teach a class, and that is something I called the dhikr challenge. Now, the dhikr challenge has 3 parts. It is part of our protection. It creates a fortress around our hearts and around our marriages, around our families, around our lives. So the first part of the dhikr challenge is our salah. That the salah itself is a protection. The salah is like oxygen for the heart. Without the salah, we can't be successful in anything else. That's like a person saying, okay, let's talk about this relationship advice and then eat healthy and organic and exercise, but you're not breathing, right? That wouldn't make any sense. If you're not breathing, there's no point in discussing how to work out or how to eat organic raw food, because you're gonna die if you don't have oxygen. And it's the same thing with salah, that you need salah just to keep you alive spiritually. And then only when you're alive spiritually can you ever have success in anything else that you do, whether that's your family or your marriage or anything else. So number 1 is the salah. The second is the adhkar. Now, I advise people that there's an app called My Dua, MYDUAA. It's just Fortress of a Muslim. Many of you have heard, and it comes in a little book, but it also comes in an app form. So My Dua, MYDUAA, is an app form of Fortress of a Muslim. And what it is it's a collection of the ayahs and the supplications of the Prophet ﷺ that he would do throughout his day. And it gives us a whole list. There's a dua for everything in life, right? If you're traveling, if you have new clothes, if you're entering your house, if you're leaving your house, intimacy, eating, everything under the sun, there's a dua for it, which is so amazing because it gives us this connection to God, even in the mundane, in everything that we're doing. So it's extremely important, and it's extremely powerful. So what I advise as the second part of this prescription is, when you download this app, that you go through it and you can create a collection for you that you do every single day. This collection is just like, it's just like your vitamins and minerals and medicine of the day. It will keep you spiritually strong, and it also serves as a protection. It serves as a fortress to protect you from shaitan, to protect you from your nafs, to protect you from harm, every kind of protection. So it's very important that we create a daily routine of adhkar. And this app is one way that you can organize that by creating a starred collection. So if you go under the starred section when you download it, and then you can, what you do is, when you go through the various categories, there's going to be morning and evening supplications. There's going to be supplications for protection. There's going to be supplications for forgiveness. What I advise is that you go through certain categories, specifically morning, evening supplications, protection supplications, and forgiveness supplications, or you pick out from those various categories and you star them. So what that does is it creates a collection that you will then read every day. But just make sure that it includes morning and evening supplications, forgiveness supplications, as well as protection supplications. So protection from harm, as well as protection from shaitan, etc. Any harm of seen or unseen. And then what you do is, after Fajr every day, you open up your app and you read your supplications for the morning. After Asr, you open up again and you read your supplications for the evening. And one easy way to do that is, you already have your starred list, so you would just read that in the morning and then in the evening. And then there are supplications before you sleep. And again, keep in mind that anything that is consistent, even if it's small, is better than nothing. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah loves the actions that are consistent, even if they're small. وَلَوْ أَقَلْ. So it's very, very effective, and you will find that your relationships will be a lot healthier, and your families will be a lot healthier, and your marriages will be a lot healthier and stronger when you are strict with your adhkar. And who doesn't need protection? I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only protector. So it's very, very important to have this be consistent. And finally, number 3 in that prescription is the Quran, keeping a regular, healthy relationship with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم سبحانك الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.